Imagine this. A person walks through life trying their best to be kind, generous, agreeable. They avoid conflict, help where they can, and always try to be liked. Society praises them. They're a good person. But beneath the surface, something starts to unravel. They feel drained, invisible, sometimes even resentful. And eventually they wonder, why does doing the right thing feel so wrong? That's the paradox of being nice. What if I told you that being nice is not always an act of goodness, but sometimes a mask for fear, a strategy for survival, or even a tool for self-erasure? What if being nice, in the way we've been taught, is actually a silent form of self-betrayal? This isn't a video about being mean or cruel. This is about waking up to the hidden cost of compulsive niceness and how society benefits when we stay stuck in it. Because nice people are easy to control. Nice people rarely say no. Nice people don't cause trouble. Nice people internalize the pain instead of pushing back. And that's exactly how systems, whether cultural, political, or even interpersonal, keep power in place. So let's rip the mask off. And let's start with a deeper question. What is niceness really? And why do we value it so much? On the surface, niceness looks like kindness. But they're not the same. Kindness is rooted in strength, in clarity, in truth. Niceness, on the other hand, is often rooted in fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being disliked. It's a performance, a defense mechanism, a way to stay safe by becoming agreeable.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
And we learn this early. As kids, we're told, be nice. When we're angry, we're told, calm down. When we cry, we're told, don't make a scene. So we internalize the idea that to be accepted, we must be pleasant even at the cost of being real. We become emotional contortionists, shaping ourselves into whatever version of nice the moment demands. But here's the problem. Every time we choose niceness over truth, we chip away at our authenticity. We become strangers to ourselves. And the more we do it, the more we forget what we even believe, want, or need. We become passive passengers in our own lives. And that's the paradox. The nicer we are, the more approval we get, but the less alive we feel. So let's go deeper. What happens when you suppress your truth long enough? You start to resent the very people you're trying to please. You start to feel inauthentic in your relationships. You start to lose your sense of boundaries, direction, even identity. And eventually you burn out, not from working too hard, but from not being yourself. This is where the philosophical tension lies. Niceness is praised publicly, but it's privately destructive when it's disconnected from integrity. And here's something society doesn't want you to know. You can be kind without being nice. You can be honest without being cruel. You can be powerful without being feared. But that takes reprogramming your entire relationship to conflict, to approval, and most of all to yourself. Let me ask you something personal. When was the last time you said yes and immediately regretted it? Why did you say yes? Was it out of love or out of fear? Fear of disappointing someone, fear of confrontation, fear of rejection. That's the crux of it. Most niceness isn't about generosity, it's about insecurity. It's about needing others to like us so we can feel safe in our own skin. But that's a dangerous place to live from. Because when we outsource our self-worth to external approval, we become manipulable. We become easy to exploit, and society knows this. That's why nice people are rewarded not with power, but with praise. Praise is not the same as respect. Praise keeps you smiling. Respect makes space for your truth. And most of us don't even realize we've been conditioned for praise. We perform the role of the helper, the peacemaker, the good friend, the reliable one, not because it's who we are, but because it's who we were trained to be. But here's the philosophical twist. If your goodness is dependent on being liked, is it really goodness? Or is it something else entirely? Because real goodness, real virtue is often misunderstood. It's inconvenient. It disrupts. It tells the truth, even when it's unpopular. It protects what is sacred, even when it's uncomfortable. That's not what society wants from nice people. Society wants you to stay quiet, to keep the peace, to not rock the boat. Because if you rock the boat, the system might tip. And when you start to realize this, you begin to understand why so many nice people feel so disempowered. They've been trained to avoid conflict at all costs. But conflict is not inherently bad. Conflict is how truth emerges, how clarity is born, how transformation happens. So let's flip the script. What if the goal isn't to be nice but to be real? What if your truth, even when it's messy or inconvenient, is more valuable than your politeness? What if your boundaries are not walls but bridges to deeper connection? What if your anger, yes, your anger contains sacred information about your values, your limits, your needs? Because here's another paradox. The more you suppress your anger to be nice, the more passive-aggressive, resentful, and disconnected you become. That's not kindness. That's self-sabotage in disguise. And we all do it. We smile when we want to scream. We say no worries when we're actually full of worry. We say it's fine when it's not fine. And then we wonder why our relationships feel shallow, why our energy feels drained, why we feel unseen. But how can anyone see us if we're always hiding behind the mask of niceness? So here's the challenge. Are you willing to disappoint others in order to stop disappointing yourself? That's the edge. That's where transformation happens. And it's terrifying because we've built our identities around being the one who never causes pain. But in doing so, we've caused it to ourselves. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is say the hard thing. Speak the truth. Set the boundary. Walk away. Not to be cruel, but to be clear. Because clarity is kindness. And kindness, real kindness, starts with you. Let's pause for a moment and reflect. Who would you be if you stopped trying to be liked? What would you say? What would you do differently? What would you finally let go of? That's not just a thought experiment. That's a doorway. Behind it is the life you were meant to live, not as a performer, but as a participant. A life where your yes means something because your no is sacred. A life where you're not just liked but respected. A life where your presence doesn't depend on your performance. A life where your kindness is powerful because it's honest. And that's what society doesn't want you to know. Because when nice people wake up, they become impossible to control. They stop seeking approval and start speaking truth. They stop people-pleasing and start soul-keeping. They stop shrinking and start shining. And that light, that authenticity, that power, it changes everything. Because approval is a drug. It feels good. It's addictive. And it's everywhere, from likes on social media, to praise from bosses, to the subtle nods of acceptance from peers and family. But like any drug, it comes with a cost. And that cost is your authenticity. Most of us won't admit it, but we're approval addicts. We shape our personalities, our choices, even our dreams around what we think others will accept. Not necessarily what we want, not what our soul is screaming for, but what will keep the peace, get the applause, avoid the awkward silence. But here's what they don't tell you. The more approval you seek, the less free you become. Because every time you edit yourself to be liked, you carve away a piece of your truth. You become a character in someone else's story. And eventually you forget what it means to write your own. Let's stop here and ask a deep question. Who are you when no one is watching? Not your job title, not your Instagram bio, not your role in your family. Who are you? Most people don't know because they've never had the space or the courage to find out. And that's not entirely their fault. We're born into systems that reward conformity and punish divergence. School teaches us to fit in. Work teaches us to obey. Social media teaches us to perform. And slowly, we build a life around being liked, never realizing that likability is often the enemy of truth. Because truth isn't always likable. Truth is inconvenient. It challenges. It disrupts. It says no when everyone expects yes. It sets boundaries. It walks away. It doesn't always smile. And when you live in a world that worships comfort, that kind of truth is dangerous. But here's the paradox. The more you chase being liked, the more you lose the parts of you that are actually lovable. Because what people fall in love with, what they remember, is not how agreeable you are. It's your depth, your weirdness, your courage, your fire, your refusal to pretend. That's what leaves a mark. But we've been so busy trying to keep everyone happy, we've forgotten how to be human. Let's go even further. Why is approval so powerful? Why do we need it so badly? It goes back to our wiring. We are social animals. Evolution taught us that belonging equals survival. If the tribe rejected you, you died. So we developed finely tuned radars for social acceptance. We learned to adapt, to mirror, to please. But what kept us alive in the wild is now killing our souls in modern life. Because today, rejection isn't death. It's discomfort. But we treat discomfort like it's fatal. We avoid it at all costs, even if it means abandoning ourselves. So we stay in relationships that don't nourish us. We take jobs that drain us. We say yes when we mean no. And we smile while we slowly disappear. But what if discomfort wasn't something to avoid, but something to learn from? What if rejection wasn't a reflection of your worth, but a redirection toward your truth? What if being disliked by the wrong people is evidence that you're finally becoming yourself? Because here's the truth: you cannot be fully alive and universally approved. The more authentic you become, the more polarizing you will be. Some people will love you more. Others will pull away. That's not a problem. That's a filter. It's the universe clearing space, making room for alignment. But to trust that, you have to let go of the addiction to being liked. And that's hard, because approval is comfortable. Approval is familiar. Approval is easy. But growth is uncomfortable, messy, lonely at times. It asks you to risk being misunderstood, to disappoint people, to face silence. But silence is where you meet yourself. And in that meeting, something huge happens. You realize that you don't need approval to be whole. You don't need applause to be valid. You don't need permission to take up space, because your worth is inherent, not granted, not earned, not up for negotiation. Let's return to the philosophical lens. In ancient Greece, Socrates was sentenced to death not because he was violent, but because he questioned too much. He disrupted the comfort of the status quo. He refused to be nice in the way society wanted. He chose truth over approval, and he paid the price. But what he gained was immortality, not in body, but in impact. And that's the choice we all face. Do you want to be remembered for being agreeable or for being real? Because agreeable people blend in. Real people stand out, and standing out might cost you approval. But it will give you something far more valuable: self-respect. Because at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself. You have to sleep with your own conscience. And no amount of praise can replace the peace that comes from knowing you told the truth, even when it was hard. So here's the final question. Who are you willing to disappoint in order to stop betraying yourself? Maybe it's a boss, a friend, a parent, a partner. Maybe it's the version of you that thought you had to be perfect to be loved. Whoever it is, let it go. Because real connection doesn't come from performance. It comes from presence, from showing up fully, messy, honest, unapologetic. That's what the world needs right now. Not more nice people, more real people. People who are kind, but boundaried, open, but discerning, compassionate, but fierce in their truth. Because when you become that kind of person, you give others permission to do the same. You become a mirror not of perfection, but of freedom. And that is the most revolutionary thing you can offer this world. So don't just be nice. Be true. Be awake. Be you.